Welcome back to another Purpose Serve podcast episode. I'm here with the great Pervis Ellison, never nervous Pervis. Played 10 years in the NBA, first round draft pick, 1 in a million guy. Great dude, and also played at Louisville. Freshman year, National Player of the Year, and also won the championship his freshman year. So the very, very first thing that I wanted to ask you is how the game of basketball gravitated towards you, and what was your calling towards it when you first started off this whole entire journey?
Well, first, let me start off by saying thank you and for having me on your podcast, number one. And then number two, also, everyone out there, be safe, wear your mask. Um, this corona thing is serious and we must take it serious so that we can overcome it and everybody can get better. So I just wanted to make sure I
Absolutely.
acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
Now, the question in terms of how I got started playing basketball, that was the question, correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I remember I was actually a late bloomer. I grew up in the state of Georgia, which, as you know, is predominantly a football state, especially 25, 30 years ago. It was all about football. And I didn't play basketball until my sophomore year in high school. And what happened was that over the summertime, we would always visit my grandmother's house. And so I'm visiting my grandmother. My grandmother lived in a rural area in Georgia called Sodus, Georgia. It's hard to find on the map. And there, she had a big pond on her land. So the whole time I was there, we never wore any shoes. All we did was swim all the time. So we only had shorts on. So the entire time I was there, I didn't know I was growing because I didn't have any clothing on, no shoes. So I didn't know I was growing. I was probably I was around 6'2" at the time, playing wide receiver at my high school. And my mother came to pick me up from my grandmother's house because it was about an hour and a half from my parents' house. So when she picked me up, right, she was just staring at me. And I didn't know why she was staring. But the problem was I had grew from 6'2" to 6'9". That's how tall I had grown. So from that point on, once I got home, and then I knew, that's what I knew because at that time I had to put my sneakers on.
Oh,
And
God.
I was probably wearing after growth, I was wearing a 15. But before that, it was like a 10. But I didn't wear shoes that entire time we were there because all we would do was get up in the morning, go swim in a pond, hang out, and that was our entire day. So anyway, so when I got back to high school, my high school coaches said, "Hey, no more football for you. We're going to focus on basketball." And that's how I started playing.
That's crazy. This is new insight for me, man. This is new insight, and especially being the person that you are and the legacy that you left at this point. No one would ever guess that you were a late bloomer. You get what I'm saying? Sophomore year, 10th grade, just starting to play. That's crazy. That's crazy. So talk about how it was like, playing at Savannah when you was in high school and how that experience was for you.
Oh, that was a great experience. So my sophomore year, so coming back, that was after my sophomore year. So it was going into my junior year. It was my sophomore summer. So now going into my junior year was the first year I played. It was fun. I thoroughly enjoyed the game, and I knew that I could play, but I didn't know how good I was going to be. And then that following summer, but I didn't have any letters of intent, any college letters of intent. But that following summer, I went to there was a basketball camp called BC Camp in Milledgeville, Georgia. And I went to that camp. And when I went to that camp, all the top basketball players all around the country were there. Now, again, I had no idea because I wasn't, reading publications or doing any of that, checking where my ranking was. I wasn't doing any of that. If it didn't have anything to do with football, I didn't know anything about the situation. So So I'm down at the camp and I performed really well. I knew I was performing well because the last day of the camp, Dr. J was our guest speaker. Julius Erving played with the Philadelphia 76ers. He was our guest speaker. And he brought out, at that time, I didn't know, but now I know, looking back on it, he brought out the player that they thought was the best player in the camp, right? So he called me out and played me one-on-one, right?
Oh man.
Yes, and he 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 gave me the ball first, and I did stuff. Took like a couple dribbles, but I wasn't really good with handling the ball, and I ended up taking a jump shot, missed. He
Yeah.
got the rebound back, and he proceeded to beat me 11-0. Scored 11 straight points, right? And
What?
the funny part about the story is we became great friends. You know, you know, after that, once I got in the league, and obviously he was retired, but
Yeah.
he continued to be mentorship towards a bunch of players in the league. But anyway, he remembers that story, and he always tells me, "Herb, I beat you 11-0. Don't ever forget it."
So he won't ever let you
I
let that
tell him,
go,
I said,
man.
"Look, no. I was like, Doc, I was only 16 years old.
So
Yeah.
with that being said, how much were you able to learn from Julius Erving and what he did, and how were you able to apply that later on when the torch got passed down to you and it was your time to do what you had to do in the NBA? Because a lot of people, they look at the NBA and they see you guys, but they don't really know how difficult it is to maintain that for pretty much 1 or 2 months. But doing it for like throughout the whole entire 90s, that's pretty freaking crazy, man. So what have you learned from Julius Erving throughout his career, and what he has taught you that you was able to apply for your career?
Well, I think first and foremost, Doc is a total gentleman, and uh, the respect that he has for the game, um, how he interacted with current players and past players. He just set the example. He's a role model for all to follow, and he passed the torch to Michael Jordan in the league, and Michael Jordan turned around and passed it to Kobe Bryant, who in turn passed it to LeBron James, and on and on. That will happen. But I think that experience, meeting Doc at that basketball camp, it just showed me his drive, his competitiveness. Um, he was so precise in everything he was doing on the basketball court. His message after the game was that no matter what in life, give it your all. You only get one shot, and when you're given this shot through sports, take total advantage of it. So he emphasized uh, making sure that you finished up your college degree, making sure uh, you didn't squander the opportunity. So it was fascinating, and it was definitely a learning experience.
I know after that camp, that probably opened up your perspective to a whole different insight and a whole different world that before that camp, you didn't even realize, what you was really stepping into. So how was you able to handle that, all the attention and everything leaving that camp and what was to come? How was you able to handle that?
Well, I think the first thing was probably a week after that camp is when my first uh, letters started coming in from colleges. So that was exciting, getting a letter from the University of Georgia, getting a letter from the University of Duke, University of Kentucky, Kansas, UCLA. That was exciting, and it was exciting for my family. Um, but then it became uh, tough because now you're at the process of trying to figure out what you liked and what school you wanted to go to. So that process, although it was exciting, it was definitely a tough decision because those top programs are and as a 17-year-old kid, you just like a kid in a candy store. So
Yeah.
it was fun times. was definitely fun times, and I can remember my high school coach. Fortunately, I had a coach that had been through that type of experience with players receiving college basketball scholarships, and the advice and that he gave was to be patient. And at that time, I didn't know anything about you visit the school, so you actually got 5 visits. So I went on 5 different visits to different schools. I actually visited, let's see, Virginia. I went to Virginia, Georgetown. Um, I did a Maryland visit, Louisville, and UCLA. Those were the schools I went to visit. And the UCLA visit was, I had never been to California, so you couldn't
So
turn that down.
that was your first time going all the way out west. So, oh man, so you got the California sunshine and all.
No. Time out. That was my first time on a plane.
What? Oh, nah, man.
I think you got to remember the times here. You know, these were the early '80s, so it was my first time on a flight.
Wow, what was that experience like? Man, I know you had to be nervous, man. I would have been creeped out if I, like, my first time getting on the plane at that age. I would have been like, nah, this is kind of sketchy, man.
It was weird. You know, it was weird. I think I didn't like the fact that it was such a long flight, obviously.
Yeah.
But the good part was, I think we had a layover. I think we stopped in Texas at the time. So, but it was different. I mean, I was excited to do it, but then I didn't know that it would take that long.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And that was the thing, just sort of being, confined in a small area for that long of a time. And
especially with how tall you are, man.
About it, right, I was going to say the bad part about it, UCLA didn't even get me a first class ticket. So I'm flying out there. I'm their coach. So
you probably was in there like this, man, like, oh my God.
Yeah. Looking back on it, you laugh about it, but it was a great experience, though.
So what made you gravitate towards Louisville?
I think it was probably several reasons. First, in the '80s, Louisville, we pretty much dominated the '80s in the college basketball scene. So they were always on television. They had won the championship in 1980 at the time. So, that was like the premier school. So that was definitely more so one of the things that made me decide to go there, as well as it was a small town, and since I grew up in a small town, I just felt comfortable. The atmosphere was comfortable. The state of Kentucky loves its basketball, so it was so opposite of growing up in Georgia, where Georgia's predominantly a football state. Kentucky is all about basketball, and so I really like that, and and that's why I made the decision.
How was it being under Denny Crum tutelage, man? And what did you learn from him as a head coach and just the system that he had in place? Because, like, your era of basketball, it was really huge for you because it was a big man's game. The game was run through you. And then after that, you're the person pretty much setting up everything for everybody else. And he had to have a great deal of trust in you, man. So how did you handle that pressure, from the coach and the whole situation? And also, what did you learn from him as well?
Well, I think first and foremost, Coach Crum is a wonderful human being. And I think, the lessons and the coaching philosophy he had, obviously he learned from the gentleman that coached UCLA to all the championships. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. You too young to know.
I'm sitting here, man. Maybe a smart
John
guy.
Wooden. John Wooden. John Wooden. I hope you know that name.
I know that name. I know that name.
I believe he won 12 NCAA championships as a college coach at UCLA. He coached Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He coached Bill Walton, and the list goes on and on in terms of greats that and Hall of Famers that he coached. Well, anyway, his philosophy, Coach Crump was an assistant coach there. So obviously, I just gave you two of the greatest big men to ever play. So his whole game plan, obviously, definitely centered around the center, especially from a passing perspective. So playing that high post allowed me to be extremely comfortable with the ball. Um, so that translated well into the NBA. But I think his patience, because I was a freshman, I was a starter. That particular ball club, now I reside in the state of New Jersey, which is ironic because three of the guys on that team is from Camden, New Jersey. That we won the championship my freshman year.
Yeah.
And it's funny because one of the kids now, I have a basketball program that's part of the Nike League, and one of the players is Dewan Wagner.
Yeah, man, great player.
Right, his father, Dewan Wagner Sr., played in the NBA, but his father, Milt Wagner. Now I'm dating myself. His father, Milt Wagner, was my teammate in college on that championship team back in 1986.
How crazy is that? And it just so happened that, later on down the line that you guys would be in New Jersey, you know what I mean? Life is weird like that, man, with all the coincidences. I don't know, man. To me, I personally believe that this is not a coincidence and it's not an accident for things to lead up the way it did, you know what I mean? With you even playing on the same team as his father. And now, you know what I mean? You got his grandson.
Right, correct.
That's crazy, man.
Else. But that young man is going to be, he's the number one player in high school in the sophomore class. It's going to be interesting to watch his career develop over the years. To have three generations, a third generation that has the opportunity to play in the NBA, that's an incredible story. So, we're excited for that young man, and because he's got some great things that he's going to accomplish ahead of him.
That's awesome, man. And when you get a player like that, what's the most important things that you try to teach them at the age that they're at?
Well, I think the first thing is respect the game and enjoy the game. I think when you're young, you think it's going to last forever. So I tell you to really focus, but make sure you use the game and don't let the game use you. It's important for these young guys to understand that this sport can take you a long way, but because it'll give you the opportunity to get an education. Then after that, if you're fortunate enough, it can provide a profession for you. So you need to take advantage of the opportunity, but that means work extremely hard and don't ever take it for granted.
That's a amazing message, man. Because like for me personally, and even while I started what I'm doing is for literally what you just said. And people can apply this, outside of sports with, working extremely hard at something and giving it your all every single day and then reaping the benefits that come from that. And that's why, like, it's important for me to like you even telling your journey because, it's not an easy thing to do what you did. In fact, it's like one of the hardest things on this planet to even do, but it's possible. A lot of people will look at the life that you live and ultimately say that that's impossible, but it's not because you lived it, and with that being said, I want people to cultivate the same feeling towards anything that they're trying to do, just like what you had with basketball, go about it in a constructive way, but also help other people along the way while you're going through this journey for yourself. So the next thing that I wanted to ask you is how was draft night? How was you feeling that night? And like, how was you feeling that night when draft night came about?
the some of the audio is a little patchy, so I'm kind of getting half of the question. But
Yeah,
let me first start with, I think one of the things. Can you see this picture behind me?
I can see that picture. I can see it.
Okay, you see it in this hand. What's in this hand?
That's a stack of
It's
books.
books. Exactly. It's a stack of books, and then in this hand is a basketball. So that message is what it is. I think, no matter what you do in life, typically most successful people, they have that knowledge. And, not everybody may graduate from college, but you definitely need to have the mindset of learning. And books are in the library. So whatever craft you may want to do, books are in the library. So there's never an excuse now. You used to you hear a lot of people say, well, you got to go to college and you got to graduate. Yes, I totally agree with that, but I also agree with the fact that there's no excuse because books are in the library. So you can learn a craft. You can learn a trade. There's trade schools in your community. So there's not an excuse now for our young people not to have opportunity, because again, last time I'm going to say it, what's in the library?
Books.
Books. And the last time I checked, all you need is a library card, and you can go read anything you want. But draft night was extremely exciting. My draft was in New York. Was in the city of New York at the time. So I was actually born in the New York city in the Bronx. So we moved down to Savannah, Georgia when I want to say 3 years old.
Oh
So
wow,
so I spent the entire time.
that's
Yeah. So
crazy.
I was not, but I grew up in Savannah, Georgia. So, but and that happened to be my first time back in New York. was the
Since
draft.
since you was born and left at around 3.
No, I take that back. It was the second time because we actually played when I was in college. We played in the preseason NIT, and the Final Four was in New York. So I forgot about that. So that was my second time back to New York
Yeah.
since I left when I was growing up. But anyway, draft night was exciting. Um, I did not know anything. My agent at the time was Bill Strickland and David Falk. So they were scrambling around trying to gather all the information. Um, so I just remember, my parents, my family, they were all there. It was set up a little different than how you kind of see it now, how they have the
Yeah.
table, the round table. They didn't
Yeah.
have that. Your family it was like going to the movies. So they were in the in the
Oh,
stands, like watching
in
a
the rows
movie.
and stuff like yeah.
Right. So like kind of like going to Academy Awards show or MTV Music Awards show. So they were sitting in the audience, and they had the players on the first row. So you can imagine like we're on the first row and everybody else is sitting behind us.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there at that time, and now it starts, and David Stern takes the stage, and he's about to make the announcement, and I'm
Oh
sitting
man.
there, and I don't know what to expect. I knew I would be drafted within the first three, but
Yeah.
I didn't know what the situation was going to be. And he got up there and he said, with the first pick, the Sacramento Kings select Pervis Ellison. And I just remember at that time, my eyes was I looked down, and then I focused on my family and the joy and the excitement. They were jumping up, clapping, and it was a moment that I'll never forget. I'll cherish for the rest of my life.
Man, that moment was probably so overwhelming once your name got called. Oh my God. That will, man, I think I'll pass out, man. Especially being the first person, man. Whew. That'd
No,
be
what
like,
you
oh
don't
man.
no, what you don't want to do is stumble or fall, because you had to walk, and then I
Go up the
walked up the
steps.
stairs, and then you walk all the way across. Like it was a long walk, and I was like, "Whew, take your time," because you are excited, but your heart is beating fast, and that's David Stern. You dream about that. You imagine shaking David Stern's hand, our late commissioner, great commissioner, by the way. And I walked across the stage, and he just said, "Congratulations, welcome to the league." He said, you couldn't hear that on camera, but that's what
Yeah.
he said to me. And then from there, I got my hat. You know how you typically get your little hat,
Yeah.
Sacramento King, the ugliest hat in the world because it was sky blue at the time.
Oh
Sacramento
yeah,
King
with them, with
sky
they,
blue,
yeah, with the
that sky
white going
blue
down.
uniform.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. Oh my goodness. So I put the hat on, and then it was interview time.
That's crazy. So you mentioned David Falk, man. How is he as a person, man? He seems like a genius, man, and the way he's able to market and
Wait a
just
minute, you mean David Falk, the agent? Or you
yeah,
meant David Stern, our commissioner?
David Falk, the agent.
The commissioner? Oh
David
yes.
Falk, the
Oh,
agent.
no
Yeah.
question. Oh, no question. He was the agent in the '80s. I mean, this guy had everybody. He pretty much created that model of he had Michael Jordan, he had Patrick Ewing, he had Karl Malone, David Robinson. The list goes on and on. He had everybody at that time. And me being the projected number one pick, I got the opportunity to have him as my representative. So, but he smart gentleman. He and another guy named Bill Strickland. Bill Strickland, the name of their company at the time was called ProServe. So he had a lot of tennis clients. His agency was the top agency in sports at that time. So it was, he he was extremely smart man, and he knew how to negotiate contracts to get you the best deal.
It's just crazy how they was able to just take over against the major large like people that they was going against. Like for example, with David getting Mike to sign with Nike, you know what I mean, and him facing all the odds against everybody else. So I never met him personally, of course, but he had to be the type of person to think outside of the box and come with different angles to handle a lot of the situations that he was dealing with. Because, at the time, it seemed like that was a lot of new nuanced things that he was doing. But at the same time, he was progressing extremely quickly. So about time, for example, when he was like extremely established, when he came your way, I know like looking at him was like, dang, like this guy is extremely insightful.
Well, definitely. I think at that time the league was sort of in transition. We owe a lot to Magic and Larry because they turned the league around. The perception of the league. We had drug issues in the league, and attendance and everything's down. So the league was not in a good state. And Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and David Stern all kind of came in at the same time, and they, with their play and his vision, they completely turned it around. And then all of a sudden, this cat from North Carolina comes up, and he just takes the lead to a whole nother level. So, this new generation, they need to take time and realize and think, and definitely thank Michael when you see Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson, because the salaries that exist now was because of those three.
So what was it like, playing against those three, man?
Well, with Magic and Larry, I grew up watching those guys. Magic was my favorite player. Uh, my father loved Dr. J, so it was so when the Lakers beat Dr. J, what year was that? That was Magic's first year. That was an exciting
Yeah,
situation when they
I
beat the
think that was
Sixers for the championship.
80. I think it
Oh,
was.
I think it was 80. I think it was 80. Yes, that 79-80 season.
Yeah,
But so when I got in the league, it was exciting to see those guys when you play against them. So I got a chance to witness greatness. Larry was just, he probably had maybe two more dominant years, but his body was starting to deteriorate with his back injuries and things. And then obviously Magic, with the HIV situation, had to retire. But I did get an opportunity to play against those guys, and it's something that I'll cherish for a lifetime. I told all my kids, I tell my grandkids coming.
That's amazing, man. It's like, for me.
But Michael, I forgot about Michael. But Michael, I was able to, my career was, I'm younger than Michael, but I was there for those 6 championships, so I could tell you, without a doubt, he was an unbelievable player. It's interesting listening to people compare. Everybody want to always talk about who's the greatest, and I think it's tough. That question is tough because uh, you know it's hard to compare athletes in different times. The game was played a lot different than how it's played now.
Yeah.
So I would say I love to tell people that I think LeBron James has had although it's not over yet, he's had the greatest career ever. There's no question. The sustained excellence for as long as he has. He's still playing at an MVP level. That's a
Yeah.
credit to, how that young man takes care of his body. So I would definitely say between he and Kareem, but I'm definitely leaning more towards LeBron James as having the greatest NBA career because the greatest career I think has to go to Kareem because Kareem only lost 2 games from high school all the way through college in his life. That's amazing, right? He only lost 2 games. But
That's
then I think
crazy.
Michael Jordan is this. Oh yeah. Oh, you do your homework on Kareem. That's why it's always interesting that sometimes he's left out of the conversation. But Kareem was, he was a phenom. And but if I had to pick the greatest player, I would have to say that's Michael Jordan. But the greatest NBA career, I'd have to get that to LeBron James.
Man, I like how you split that up, man. I never heard it split up that way. It's always just straight on who's the best player. That's pretty much it. Like for me, I'm holding it down for Michael Jordan right now. I've been holding it down for him for a long time, man. Because nowadays, especially guys around my age, it's like LeBron all the way, man. But for me, the tone that Michael Jordan set for the whole, evolutionizing the game of basketball on a global scale. He made everybody change the way how they see the game, how they play the game, and how they look at the game. You know what I mean? And with that being said, with people like that, they often pioneers for the next generation to come in. And even like with what you said, you always got to pay homage to the ones like beforehand. Because I know for Michael Jordan, he wouldn't say that he's the best player. You know what I mean? And he'll probably give credit to his predecessors that came before him.
That's true. I think with anything, typically there's evolution. So there's going to be bigger, faster, and stronger. And you see that with LeBron, bigger, faster, stronger. And there's going to be someone come behind him, bigger, faster, stronger. But, the legacy that both those gentlemen, have, that Michael left on the game and LeBron is continuing, it's synonymous with greatness. I think LeBron, his ability to win with a variety of teams is hasn't been matched by anyone. He's the kind of dude that you go to the park and he just pick 4 and
that's all he needs.
His team's gonna be on the court the whole entire day. He's a tremendous athlete, but he's also a great business person, role model. I think the example that Michael set from a business perspective. I think he gave the blueprint to LeBron, and I think LeBron's going to try to take it and run with it. You look at some of the things Michael's been able to accomplish, owning an NBA franchise and you know, having his own brand, Air Jordan brand within the Nike family. So I think, you know, there's not only a basketball torch that was passed, there was a blueprint that Michael set that these guys are able to follow. I think, you look at, if you look in the entertainment world, you look at somebody like Jay-Z, you look at Jay-Z and what's the gentleman from California? Um, I'm talking about the rapper that, that had the beats. What's his
Dr.
name?
Dre.
Dr. Dre. Yes, these guys, they're the pioneers in their industry, and they setting the blueprint from a business and a performance standpoint. So I think each generation is getting better and better. Adding both, and I think to add both symbolizes this picture, right?
Yeah.
Symbolizes this picture because you have whatever you're doing, your sport, your entertainment, what have you, but you're bringing that knowledge, that business acumen into it, and I think that's a great message for our young athletes out there.
And also looking at that picture as well, it's also displaying as well how you have to balance the two things. You know what I mean? And you can't have one fall short and the other like rising up. You gotta everything is about maintaining balance. And for me, that symbolism in that is like extremely, extremely important as well, because a lot of people don't understand when they go about a lot of things that they do in life, there's always an imbalance going on, and you gotta find that balance, especially being like an athlete, and even more so like the younger athletes that's like in high school, college, that is really, really important at that age to find that balance and maintain that balance, because it only gets more and more difficult as you go on. And it's like important to maintain that foundation of balance early. So like, you know what I mean? Once the challenges really start rolling in, you got something to fall back on.
Well, definitely. I mean, it's just life experiences as well as when you're young and as a student athlete, and that word itself is exactly what it should be. It's a student athlete, and I think you get to college, you want to choose a program that emphasizes the academics, that make sure everything is set up for you in terms of tutors, uh, time set aside for study hall and create great study habits. I remember, there's a young man that played in my organization that is at the University of Kentucky now. And one of the reasons he chose the University of Kentucky is his mom and dad, they were big on academics, and that whole foundation, how, you think of Kentucky and there's synonymous with one and done players, but they're also an academic institution. And, those guys that are one and done, the guys like John Wall, Anthony Davis, all those players, Carl Towns.
Yeah.
The one thing people don't know is each one of those kids are going back in the summer to finish their degree, whether it's online or what have you. So, so that whole situation was important to his parents, and it was one of the reasons why he decided to go there. But again, it's all about the foundation, and it starts at home. And hopefully, that message that uh, success typically happens when there's an educational component with it. If that message is out there, uh, then kids will have a better opportunity in this world.
Man, that was pretty good. I can't even lie to you. Also, I wanted to ask you, when your career was done, what made you start coaching, you know, after everything? Because you could have done pretty much anything that you wanted. So what made you start to get into coaching?
Kids. I had kids that were playing sports. I was fortunate enough to have three kids that all ended up getting athletic scholarships in college. So it was definitely that became, their path became my path, became me helping them to achieve their goals. It's ironic. My son now, he graduated last year, and he's waiting, waiting now for the draft to happen. That way, afterwards, he'll know exactly what his opportunities are going to be. But it was more so what brought me to the game, back to the game of basketball, was my kids, because they all enjoyed playing the sport.
That's crazy. That's full circle right there, man. That's full circle. And is like I said, like in the beginning of the podcast, it's so much that the game of basketball can teach you that you can apply to so many other things. It's pretty freaking crazy. Like I mention this all the time with the previous podcast episodes that I made. It's just that I most likely wouldn't have never started these podcasts if it wasn't for me playing basketball and my basketball journey, you know. And I feel as though people should gravitate towards.
You're breaking up.
Oh,
I couldn't hear that question.
all right. So pretty much like I was saying that people should gravitate towards. Yeah, my internet keeps saying connection is unstable. Can you hear me now? Am I good?
Yes.
So people should gravitate towards what brings them fulfillment and what is going to bring them towards their higher self. And with that being said, when you go, like, for example, if somebody wants to be a chef and they put they all into being a chef, not only are they going to learn all the tools that they need to cook and everything, but they're also going to learn traits that they can apply to their family life, to their friends and everything, that you never know that type of energy. They're going to gravitate towards finding their own individuality and servicing others as well. And that's why, like, even with you being on this show, it's like, I'm truly grateful, man. And I'm truly appreciative. But a lot of people, I believe, from your insight is going to help them understand themselves and know the opportunities that's out here and what they got to do to get things done. And it's important to me to pay attention to all of these signs that's out here and really be aware of the opportunities that's out here as well. Because I remember one of the first, when I first like initially like met you, I talked to you, and I was like, I just was playing overseas and I was trying to get back over there again and everything. And you pretty much granted me what opportunity on the spot. And you honestly, you cut to it. It was no small talk or everything. You were just like, all right, this is what it is. Boom, 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 boom. And I was like, dang, man, this dude he's straight up, man. He's straight up. But it's always opportunity out there. People just gotta be ready for it and receptive to the opportunities that's out here.
Mm. Most of that question I couldn't hear, but I think I heard you say people being ready for the opportunities.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yes, you definitely, in life, you're going to get opportunities. Nobody's not going to have an opportunity, because two reasons. One, first of all, you can create an opportunity. Again, books are in the library, so you can educate yourself on get a whole lot of information. But I think when you do get an opportunity, you have to be ready for it. That's why prepare yourself for an opportunity. I think you have people that whatever their career path they choose, there's a process that you go through, and that process you go through, you have to always remember to be able to repeat that process. In order to have success, it's about repetition. Be able to repeat what you've done that's been successful. And I think, sometimes people can lose focus, uh, with anything, sports. There's so many distractions out there. But the basic part about the business of basketball is the fact that there's the ball, gym. study your craft, be excellent in your craft. And I think if you always remember that, then you'll be okay. Because if you if you understand that whatever your career choice is, that's most important in terms of continuing to evolve and grow within that, right? And you just don't play the game, you study the game. And that's with any career choice that you do. And that's what's important. I think, if you look at doctors don't just, when they finish, that's it. So from that point on, they're just doing a surgery and they're home. No, 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 no. Doctors study, they continue to study your craft. And that would be the message that I would give young people.
Man, that was pretty good, man. I feel as though with that whole entire process, if somebody want to become something, they have to first understand the behavior traits that come with that and then mimic those behavior traits towards their individuality and not totally try to copy whatever that system is. But with the behavior traits, it starts to turn into a lifestyle. Like, for example, when like a doctor it gets done doing a surgery or the shift is done, they're still pretty much on the clock. And that's the same thing, in regards to playing basketball and being an NBA player. Just because you stepped off the court, that doesn't mean that your job is over. You still got practices. You still got extra stuff that you got to do. You still got film that you got to watch. And even with that being said, you got to prepare your body as well. Get it stronger, stretch, recovery, like the whole nine. And I believe that life is searching for these behaviors, implementing those behaviors, and then turning that into a lifestyle and doing it over and over and over again to the point where it's your being, it's not taking no real thought, it's just you.
Well, yeah, no question that I think, you know, but those are life lessons, and everybody's going to mature in their own time. Um, I remember, being a 17-year-old kid going off to college. Um, I didn't have I didn't have all the answers by no stretch of the imagination, and I didn't know what to expect. And I think so. It's all about choices in terms of the people you surround yourself with. Um, you typically you're going to be your environment in terms of the people you surround yourself with. If you want to be successful, be around successful people. That's not to say that you selective in from a race perspective or what have you. That's not what I'm saying, because there's success in every race. I just think that positive minds, positive thought, people that are like-minded, like you. That's who you want to be around. That's who you want to associate yourself with. Um, so I just think, when as a young teenager, it's you're gonna make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes as a young adult. You're going to make mistakes, but you have to continue down that path, right? If you have that path, there's going to be ups and downs. You got to realize that who you are in life, there's going to be ups and downs, and it's a matter. And what separates people is how you handle your failures, because you will fail. I think there's a quote Michael Jordan said. He talked about he has missed way more shots, winning shots, than he's made. But you only remember the made shots that he made because it makes you famous. But he's missed way more. Um, I just know that if I'm Georgetown University, I wish he would have missed that shot in the championship game from the baseline.
Yeah, from the baseline, the spot up.
Right. If you want to miss one, miss that. But no, so you just got to understand that that life's a journey. That's all. That would be my advice. It's a journey. Stay positive. Have your faith. Pray every night. Have an understanding of, of understanding, and build a kinship and friendship with your family, and have faith in God, and things things will definitely go your way.
Absolutely. And with that being said, everybody out there, serve your purpose. Mr. Ellison sure as did his and still doing it to this day. I love you all. And Mr. Ellison, I thank you so much for being on the show, man. This is truly special, man.
No problem. Take care now. Good luck.
All right. Thank you.